Why humans are drawn to hidden knowledge. There is something predictable about the human mind, and yet most people never notice it. When information is hidden, we instinctively assume it matters more. Not because it is true, not because it is correct, but because it is restricted. You can feel this reaction instantly. The moment something is labeled secret, forbidden, or unavailable, attention sharpens, curiosity spikes, and before a single fact is known, the mind has already decided this is important. This reaction does not come from culture, it does not come from religion, and it is not learned, it is built in. In the late 20th century, an American psychologist named Robert Cialdini spent decades studying why people say yes, why they desire certain things, trust certain messages, and follow certain signals without consciously realizing it. In his book, Influence, he identified a principle that explains this attraction precisely: scarcity. Cialdini showed that when access to something is limited, the brain automatically assigns it higher value, not just emotional value, perceived importance. Scarcity does not merely increase desire, it increases the assumption that something must be meaningful. And here is the crucial part. The brain makes this judgment before evaluating truth. Restriction becomes a shortcut for significance. This mechanism evolved for survival. In early human environments, information was never evenly distributed. Knowing something others didn't, where food was stored, which path was safe, which behavior led to punishment, often meant the difference between survival and death. So the mind learned a rule it still follows today. If access is limited, pay attention. That rule never turned off. This is why hidden knowledge feels powerful even before it is understood. But scarcity alone does not explain why hidden ideas feel so compelling. There is another mechanism at work, one that turns curiosity into tension. In the 1990s, a behavioral scientist named George Lowenstein studied curiosity not as a personality trait, but as a psychological state. His research led to what is now known as the information gap theory. Lowenstein discovered something counterintuitive. Curiosity does not arise from ignorance. It arises from partial knowledge. The moment you realize there is something you almost understand, but not quite, the mind enters a state of discomfort. A gap opens between what you know and what you sense exists. And the brain wants that gap closed. Hidden knowledge creates the perfect information gap. It tells you that something important exists just beyond your reach. You don't know what it is, but you know it's there. That tension does not feel neutral. It feels urgent, and urgency keeps attention locked in place. This is why people will spend hours chasing explanations that promise revelation, even when those explanations deliver very little substance. The drive is not for information. It is for relief from cognitive tension. But there is still a deeper layer. Humans do not only want to know, they want to be someone who knows. Modern psychology has shown that beliefs are tightly bound to identity. One of the clearest voices on this subject is Jonathan Haidt, who explains that people adopt ideas not simply because they are accurate, but because those ideas help them understand who they are and where they belong. Hidden knowledge does something especially powerful here. It creates separation. Those who know are different from those who don't. They are inside a boundary. They see what others miss. That distinction creates meaning, not through truth, but through identity. This is why initiation has always mattered more than explanation. When knowledge is hidden, receiving it feels transformative. The person does not just learn something, they cross a line. They become part of a smaller group, and belonging to that group feels significant. This mechanism explains why secrecy binds people so strongly. Hidden knowledge does not merely inform, it commits. The brain treats restricted information as a marker of importance and a marker of identity at the same time. And now we reach the most dangerous misunderstanding. The human mind often confuses the feeling of insight with insight itself. In his book Thinking, Fast and Slow, Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman explains that the brain relies heavily on intuitive judgments when faced with complexity. When something feels meaningful, the mind often accepts it before analyzing it. Mystery amplifies this effect. Ambiguity activates intuition. Intuition generates confidence. And confidence feels like understanding, even when it is not. This is why people can feel absolutely certain about ideas they cannot clearly explain. The emotional signal arrives first. Reason arrives later, if at all. Hidden knowledge exploits this perfectly. It produces the sensation of depth, regardless of whether depth is present. And this is where ancient cultures were far more cautious than we are today. They understood that powerful ideas can destabilize as easily as they can clarify. Knowledge absorbed too quickly becomes distortion. Insight without structure becomes fantasy. This is why ancient systems did not simply reveal information. They regulated exposure, not to deceive, but to protect meaning. Modern culture has lost that filter. Today, information is instant, context is optional, and psychological mechanisms that once evolved for survival are triggered constantly, without guidance. The result is not wisdom, it is overload. And in that overload, the attraction to hidden knowledge becomes even stronger. Because when everything feels shallow, depth becomes seductive. When meaning feels absent, mystery steps in to replace it. This is not a flaw in human nature, it is a signal. Humans are not satisfied with noise. They are not fulfilled by surface explanations. They are drawn to what feels coherent, intentional, and structured. Hidden knowledge promises that, and whether it delivers it or not. Understanding this psychology is essential, because without it, curiosity becomes vulnerability and mystery becomes manipulation. And this brings us to the next question. The one history answers clearly. If hidden knowledge is so powerful psychologically, why was it controlled so carefully for so long? That is where we turn next. If hidden knowledge is so powerful psychologically, the next question becomes unavoidable. Why did ancient civilizations restrict it so carefully? Not symbolically, not metaphorically, but deliberately. Across cultures separated by thousands of years, the pattern repeats with almost disturbing consistency. Knowledge was not public, understanding was not equal, and access was controlled. In ancient Egypt, sacred knowledge was not written for the population. It was guarded by priestly classes trained for decades. Reading hieroglyphs alone did not grant understanding. Interpretation was restricted. Symbols were layered intentionally, designed to reveal meaning only to those who had been prepared for it. The reason was not elitism, it was stability. Egyptian priests believed that certain ideas about the soul, the afterlife, and cosmic order could destabilize the unprepared mind. Knowledge was considered dangerous if absorbed without structure. This same principle appears again in ancient Greece. When Plato founded the academy, he did not publish his most important teachings openly. In fact, historians have long noted that Plato maintained two levels of instruction: the public dialogues, written in accessible form, and the unwritten doctrines, reserved for direct transmission. Aristotle himself refers to these teachings: doctrines about first principles, the nature of reality, and the structure of being, which were never meant for mass exposure. Why? Because Plato understood something modern culture often forgets. Ideas reshape perception. Perception reshapes behavior, and behavior reshapes society. Unfiltered knowledge does not automatically liberate, it can disorient. This concern was not philosophical speculation, it was practical. A society where everyone questions reality before understanding it becomes unstable. That fear intensified during the rise of mystery schools. The Eleusinian mysteries, practiced for nearly 2,000 years, initiated participants slowly through rituals designed to transform perception. Breaking the oath of secrecy was punishable by death, not because the content was criminal, but because uncontrolled dissemination threatened the social fabric. The mysteries did not teach superstition, they taught experience. And experience cannot be mass-produced without consequence. This brings us to a critical shift. When Christianity began spreading across the Roman world, it inherited this tension between revelation and control. Early Christian communities were not unified. They debated fiercely about who should receive deeper teachings and when. Among these groups were the Gnostics, whose texts would later be buried and forgotten, until the discovery of the Nag Hammadi Library in 1945. The Gnostics believed that truth was not something imposed through authority, but something recognized internally. They taught that insight must arise from readiness, not obedience. This belief terrified institutional power, because once knowledge is framed as internal recognition rather than external command, hierarchy weakens. This is why many Gnostic texts were labeled heretical, not because they denied spirituality, but because they shifted authority away from institutions and toward individual understanding. And this is where psychology and power intersect. In the 20th century, sociologist Max Weber described authority as dependent on legitimacy. Institutions maintain control not through force alone, but through the belief that their authority is necessary. Hidden knowledge threatens this balance. If individuals believe truth can be accessed internally, without permission, authority erodes. This is why secrecy has always been double-edged. It protects knowledge from misuse, but it also preserves power, and power rarely releases control willingly. As societies evolved, the original reason for restricting knowledge, psychological readiness, slowly fused with political necessity. What began as protection became domination. Sacred texts were locked behind language barriers. Interpretation was centralized. Questioning was discouraged. Mystery transformed into dogma. Yet the human attraction to what is hidden did not disappear. It intensified. Because when access is blocked, curiosity does not die. It mutates. Throughout history, periods of strict control over knowledge are always followed by eruptions of alternative movements: alchemy, Hermeticism, esoteric Christianity, Kabbalah, secret fraternities. These movements were not fantasies. They were responses. They emerged wherever people sensed that surface explanations were insufficient. And here lies the paradox. Hidden knowledge is not inherently dangerous. Uncontextualized knowledge is. Ancient systems understood this distinction. Modern systems often ignore it. Today, information floods constantly, but understanding remains rare. People are not drawn to hidden knowledge because they want secrets. They are drawn to it because they want structure, depth, and coherence in a world that offers fragments. And when those are missing, mystery fills the gap. But mystery without grounding creates illusion, which brings us to the most important question of all. One ancient thinkers wrestled with, and modern psychology confirms. How does the mind distinguish between insight and illusion? That is where this journey turns inward. And that is exactly where we go next. At this point, something uncomfortable has to be addressed. If humans are drawn to hidden knowledge because it feels meaningful, structured, and deeper than surface explanations, why do so many people end up believing things that aren't true? Ancient thinkers asked the same question, and modern psychology gives a precise answer. The human mind does not seek truth first. It seeks coherence. This is one of the most important findings in cognitive science, explained clearly by Daniel Kahneman in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Kahneman shows that the brain operates using two systems. One is fast, intuitive, emotional. The other is slow, analytical, effortful. The problem is simple. The fast system dominates most of the time. When people encounter hidden knowledge, symbols, ancient texts, or secret explanations, the fast system activates first. It does not ask, is this true? It asks, does this make sense to me? And does this feel meaningful? And meaning feels like truth. This is why mystery is powerful and dangerous. Ancient traditions understood this risk. That is why initiation existed, not to exclude, but to slow down interpretation, to prevent the mind from filling gaps with imagination. Modern culture removed that restraint. Today, anyone can access fragments of ancient wisdom instantly, stripped of context, discipline, and preparation. Symbols circulate without explanation. Quotes float without origin. Ideas appear detached from the systems that once stabilized them. And the mind does what it always does. It completes the pattern. Psychologists call this pattern completion, the tendency to perceive meaning even when information is incomplete. It is why humans see faces in clouds, intention in randomness, and truth in half-explanations. Hidden knowledge amplifies this effect. Because when information is framed as secret, the mind assumes it must be important. When it is framed as ancient, it feels authoritative. When it is framed as suppressed, it feels authentic. None of these qualities guarantee truth. They guarantee attention. This is the moment where seekers divide into two paths. One path leads toward disciplined understanding, slow reading, historical grounding, psychological awareness, and humility. The other leads toward illusion, certainty without structure, confidence without verification, and identity built around knowing what others don't. Ancient philosophers warned about this exact danger. Plato feared sophists who used fragments of wisdom to persuade without understanding. Early Christian writers warned against false teachers who mimicked revelation without depth. Gnostic texts themselves cautioned that gnosis without balance becomes arrogance. In other words, hidden knowledge is not the problem. Unexamined belief is. The paradox is striking. People who seek hidden knowledge often do so because they sense something missing in surface explanations. They are not foolish. They are attentive. They are curious. They are dissatisfied with shallow answers. But dissatisfaction alone does not produce insight. Insight requires friction, doubt, context, and the willingness to remain uncertain longer than feels comfortable. This is why ancient systems paired revelation with restraint. Knowledge was not given to impress. It was given to transform. Transformation takes time. Without that time, mystery turns into myth. And myth, when mistaken for reality, becomes belief without foundation. Modern psychology confirms what ancient wisdom already knew. The mind prefers closure over accuracy. It would rather believe something complete than explore something uncertain. And this is why hidden knowledge feels so seductive. It offers completion. It offers identity. It offers the feeling of standing outside the crowd. But the deepest traditions never promise superiority. They promise responsibility. To know more meant to carry more uncertainty, not less. To see deeper meant to question yourself more, not others less. This is the line that separates wisdom from illusion. And this is where the true invitation lies. Not to collect secrets, not to chase forbidden ideas, but to develop the capacity to sit with complexity without rushing to belief. That capacity, patience with uncertainty, is what ancient schools were really cultivating. Because only a mind that can tolerate not knowing is capable of genuine understanding. And that is why hidden knowledge still matters today. Not because it is hidden, but because it trains the mind to slow down, to examine itself, and to resist the comfort of easy certainty. In a world overwhelmed by information, the rarest skill is not access. It is discernment. And discernment begins when curiosity is guided by humility rather than identity. If this perspective resonates with you, it is not because you seek secrets, but because you sense that understanding requires more than surface explanations. Follow the Midnight Library for stories from the edge of history, faith, and the mysteries that still shape humanity. And if the atmosphere of this film speaks to you, you can also follow the Midnight Library music, where these ideas continue through sound.